Welcome back, gents, to another episode of the Blind Pig, courtesy of bgobsession.com. If you guys haven't already jumped on and had interjected and had conversation with us, please feel free to make your way over there. Quick rundown of the starting lineup. Top left, if you're watching, is Bob, also known as Neophyte. Top right is Boone, also known as John. Bottom right is Paul, also known as Canadian Hog, the man who hails from the Great White North. He's our MVP. And top middle, I'm Derek. I am Silent Threat on the board. The new face we see here, bottom left, is somebody I know I've gone back and forth with a handful of times on Twitter, as well as John has, Bob has, and I believe Paul might have, maybe not. But Colin Dunphy, welcome. I'm gonna throw it to you. If anybody likes what you have to say or doesn't, how can they find you? Where can they track you down so they can communicate?
Twitter, I'm pretty active now for the past year. Colin, COLIN _ WFT News is my handle. I used to go under WFT News 1, but trying to be more personable. So I just love interacting with people. Appreciate all opinions and perspectives, and so I just please reach out to me on Twitter. I'd love it. And thank you so much for having me.
We didn't just pick Colin out of the hat. We love to have folks join us. So anyone out there that wants to join us, just shoot us a message. But Colin has really had a lot of smart takes, not just football takes, but specifically related to some of the less thrilling Washington news, mostly around Dan Snyder and sexual harassment. And so I just wanted to tell him thank you. I personally appreciate it because I have a lot of the same feelings you do on that topic, and we're going to get into that tonight a little bit. But I appreciate you because it's not easy being an anti-Dan Snyder or anti-sexual harassment male on Twitter, man. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
We're glad to have you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you, John. I'm happy to be here. Likewise, everything.
So without further ado, I think the thing that, and it's starting to gain some ground, we actually on the board heard about this on Friday. I think it was when it first arose. And my first question was, why the heck is this coming out at 5 o'clock on a Friday? This needs to be front page news, and it needs to be a big deal.
On the day of the Deshaun Watson signing.
What is the news, Derek?
So the biggest news right now, and we'll dig a little deeper, but Anheuser-Busch is no longer connected with the Commanders. Anheuser-Busch was a sponsor of 26 NFL teams, and they are the official league sponsor. They are the sponsor of the beer sponsor of the NFL. And this past off season, they have decided, whether it be them or the team is spinning it, that it's their decision, but Anheuser-Busch will no longer be a corporate sponsor of the team. This is very significant. One reason it's significant is because the freaking name unveiling was done on the Bud Light Pavilion at FedEx Field. There's Bud Light everywhere. There have been, I want to say it's been 12 years, but don't quote me on that, has been a sponsor of the team. And it came out today via JP Finley from 106.7 The Fan. I have to give credit where I heard it, that it's somewhere around $4 million a year coming towards the team from Anheuser-Busch, primarily of Bud Light. So the team is spinning it that it's a new opportunity, and Anheuser-Busch didn't come out and flat out say that it was because of what's going on. But I can't believe that something this lucrative and something this substantial would just disappear coincidentally, while Dan Snyder and now this is the third sponsor, have decided to move on from that corporate sponsorship.
Yeah, but this is one of the big four. This is the fourth largest sponsorship contract the team has.
I think Nike, Pepsi, and Bank of America are maybe some of the others.
No, those are the three that are larger, John. Absolutely. But yeah, this is $4 million a year. One of the things that he Finley put this in a post or on an article on NBC. this was an exclusive sponsorship, which is not like most of the rest of those 26 sponsorships that they've got. Most of the other 26 teams that are with them are not an exclusive sponsorship. Those people can go sign other sponsorship contracts with other alcohol vendors. This was we are in bed with AB InBev and AB InBev alone. And usually when that type of thing falls apart, it only slides back to a non-exclusive. It doesn't just get dropped. So there's something more here that, I mean, obviously there's something. AB InBev's not talking. Why they're not talking would be a great question that I would love to know the answer to.
I think I might know.
I heard a lot of people seizing on the fact that they didn't say why,
Yes.
and in fact, like those of us that assumed why, and we are assuming why, but that was just playing into the narrative, kind of the language that I heard a lot. But my thing is, so why on earth would they not say why? Well, they may well want to cut ties from Dan Snyder and Washington and make a statement without alienating and pissing off the other huge chunk of their endorsement deals with the rest of the NFL. I don't think it takes a genius to figure out that they probably wanted to do both things. They probably wanted to wash their hands of, all the nastiness that comes with being affiliated with a Dan Snyder owned team, and while at the same time not wanting to burn every bridge in the NFL. I don't think it's that big of a mystery.
Right. Still be nice to hear from them though.
I agree completely. One of the things that was trying to, perplexing me was, why they said what they said. They went right up to a line. This is AB InBev, and didn't cross it. And so if that was the case, if they were really trying to thread that needle, I think it makes a lot of sense that they would release this information to the Washington Post, because they would, in the next sentence, complete that thought. Tying it to the Boycott Dan email campaign, which, I think that was Nikki Javala, who wrote that. And I don't want to say, how that went down, because I don't know, in terms of how that information came to her. But it just, that to me is kind of where my mind goes to say, it was important that this information was released to the public through the Washington Post, because that context was able to be delivered.
Good thought.
I think one thing, unfortunately, if it doesn't come out, the reason in a public way, I think it would be more powerful to companies that are maybe on the fence or arguing about it in a boardroom or on board of directors somewhere about, should we cut ties, like Anheuser Busch. I think it would have been more powerful if they just come out and said it. And I wish they had, but of course, it's kind of like the guy that released or that came out about the videotapes. It's like, well, it's easy for me to say he should have come out immediately and told everyone about those cheerleader videotapes and lose all that, whatever he was earning a living off of at the time. But I mean, I'm glad they cut ties, and I do think that it's got to put some momentum behind other possible companies thinking about it. And I also think, I know I heard this a lot, and I know Colin's heard this, and some of you guys may have heard it, that you're just wasting your time howling at the moon, sending emails and posting about it. I'm sick of you posting about it. Dan Snyder, I get that a lot. It kind of made, and I'm not suggesting that any of my emails had anything to do with Anheuser Busch, deciding to cut ties, but I do think it kind of serves as a countering argument that, if the fans really got behind this, and I've said this before, in the same way that they drove Bruce Allen crawling out of Ashburn, they could make this happen if enough people, and I actually don't think it's the fans. I think it's a lot of women across the United States that are just sick of the NFL in general and don't approve of the way they operate. I don't think it's necessarily Washington fans that are the most active and vocal. I wish it was, though. And you can go to boycottdan.com and send emails to all these companies that are still supporting Washington. I still support Washington, by the way, and I know you guys feel the same way. I have no problem. This is my team. Since 1962 in Northern Virginia, it's a team I root for. I'm going to root for them but we need to do the right thing. And
Yes.
that's so we can all root without any guilt feeling someday when Dan Snyder packs his trash and gets out of Ashburn. But that's my soapbox.
I
I'm
think the
feeling
other
really
thing that we have
embarrassed.
to remember. Sorry, go ahead, Colin.
Well, I have my release the report, and I'm not even wearing anything burgundy. I feel like I'm like trying to make a statement or something for
Neither
those
am I,
who are
Colin.
watching.
Don't sweat it.
I just forgot. But yeah, nice shirt. I got my sweatshirts. I got one for me and my girlfriend, and they're great. I love them. Yeah. But
Yeah, I had to get the T-shirt. I'm not wearing the T-shirt. I figured I'd get a little more literal on this one. But
That's great, man.
the other thing that we do have to realize, just to bring it back, is that Bud Light doesn't want to burn their relationship with the NFL, and not necessarily just the other teams. They're the official beer sponsor of the league, so I'm sure that there's something in there that there's kind of even if it's a handshake agreement, it's let's not speak out against any of our entities because we have a pretty big footprint, and Miller would love to have us call them and say, how much are you willing to give us for us to flip our taps and change things?
This isn't so much about the taps as it is about the money and the signage. And that's one of those things I want to make sure people understand, because I've read a lot of stuff on Twitter about, we can get beer all over the place. Guess what?
Mhm.
Just because Bud Light's no longer sponsoring the Washington Commanders doesn't mean there won't be Bud Light on tap at FedEx Field this fall. The team can still pick up the phone, call the local distributor, and get kegs. The sponsorship is not tied to the actual beer that they're serving. The sponsorship is money that the team gets to display signage all over the stadium, most specifically in places with advantageous camera angles that turn into free on-air advertising for Anheuser-Busch. That is what the sponsorship is about. This is not about what they serve. Although in the case of Washington with an exclusive sponsorship, I feel fairly certain that there's probably some type of verbiage in there about what they can and can't serve inside the stadium. But it doesn't preclude the team from buying Bud Light, putting it on tap, and selling it to the general public when we play the Dallas Cowboys this fall. So don't, I've seen several people go, man, we ought to just make a bunch of deals with a bunch of small breweries around. That's not what this is about, guys.
Right. There will be beer. That's
right. Because those breweries can't write you a $4 million check to put their name on the side of the stadium where the TV camera can pick it up. That's really what we're talking about here.
Hey, Bob, to pick up off of what you were saying as well, as you were talking, my mind instantly went to RFK Stadium. And you think of those shots from like the field level behind the end zone. One of the things that I always associate with that is that huge Budweiser sign that you were always able to see behind the field goal posts in RFK Stadium. So you're absolutely right when you say that.
And the clock, right? Wasn't there a clock?
Yeah,
exactly. And that comes back to the point. We announced the new name on the Bud Light Pavilion. You know what I'm like? That's not an accident. I did a little digging because somebody did say that there was somebody playing the other side of it, and they said, well, Bud Light doesn't endorse everybody. Miller endorses 5 teams or whatever it was. There's a reason for it, and blah. And it's okay. Well, I looked into it. Miller's a Chicago-based beer, so it's kind of easy to make it the case why they support the Bears. And then they're also sponsors on 3 different stadiums that have been built within the last 10 years, and they have naming rights on pavilions in those stadiums. So it's a no-brainer why Bud Light's not the you know what I mean? They got in with those at the time that they got built.
Isn't Miller Coors also the official alcohol sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys?
Yes.
Yeah, and that's because there's a huge brewery right here in Fort Worth. It's one of the biggest Miller Coors installations in the nation.
Yep. And Green Bay and Minnesota has a Miller Party Deck. It's literally called the Miller Party Deck, and it's been there since they opened the stadium. So I don't think this is something that's just as simple, like you said, as the money about getting taps. My point was the NFL could easily call Miller and say, hey, let's take over, and it changes the whole dynamic of it, which is why Anheuser-Busch is probably apprehensive about coming out and flat out saying that one of your 31 owners is a scumbag and we don't want to support the piece of shit. But they can't do that because there's relationships much bigger than Dan Snyder. Where Dan Snyder's team is worth $4 billion, the NFL is probably worth 10 times that, and it's not on a bad season. So
Okay,
I know that. Go ahead.
Well, let's flip that around for a second. I mean, I understand the thought process there, but Nike didn't bat any eyes about getting Henry over the name 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and they are absolutely a sponsor. They aren't just a sponsor of the NFL and Washington and 26 other teams. I'm pretty sure every single team in the league is wearing Nike gear.
mm-hmm.
So it would seem to be a fairly big cornerstone to their business too, and they didn't bat any eyelashes 2 years ago. Is the name easier than sexual harassment?
Well, here's my counter to that. And I'm convinced Nike had the NFL's approval before they made that decision.
Possible.
I think the stuff tying Snyder allegedly, so I don't get a cease and desist letter, allegedly tying Daniel Snyder to groping people and trying to shove him in his limousine and some of the other stuff that we've heard. I think that had that's got the potential to have a big impact because what I heard, USAA actually emailed me back. Now, I'm sure they sent everyone they got an email from an email back, but they emailed me back and said that they were not going to cut ties at the current time because the team had made many changes, recognized that the problems and had made many changes. And so that was kind of their rationale for not doing anything, at least what they said. And I think that argument starts to fall apart when the owner himself is being
Implicated, yeah.
allegedly
Accused.
directly involved in the behavior that all of this is, swirling around. So I don't know. I guess that leads to the last question I have on that topic is there going to be another shoe to drop? I think a lot of these sponsors are like, what they do in business is they try to ride it out. Like, let's slow walk this, see if it goes away and it dies down. And I know people have mentioned that if the stadium deal gets done, then that's going to make it a lot harder to get rid of Daniel Snyder or those kind of arguments. But I will be curious to see if another shoe drops here anytime in the near future.
So that being the case, thinking about the whole slow walk thing, why do you think AB InBev did it now? They could have waited.
I'll take a stab at that. Yeah, I think there is a national perspective to take into account here. And I think, John, you made an allusion to it earlier. It's, there is a changing national perspective on like sexual harassment, especially in regards to the NFL. I guess that's an important just thing I want to like establish because there was a really helpful tweet from somebody in the community who I guess I probably don't want to like reveal his name or his handle, but he said that he was like a marketing executive. And this was like in a space, like, oh, I love these spaces, by the way. I don't know if like any of y'all are getting into these. I've seen you guys in, but anyways, he said that at one point during the Kaepernick, problems, the PR problems, the NFL was losing 50% of every dollar in terms of like potential sponsorship partners. And so, like I've seen some people like say that number would be just huge. Maybe that warrants a little skepticism, but for him, the proof was that they took a lot of steps to work on it. They created this whole PR team that took a lot of the talking points from Kaepernick. And then that became like their platform for change and stuff like that. So you can see them, they're making a response. It's an issue, and so which is to say, like the more his whole point was like the more this becomes a national issue, the better the chance is that there can be legitimate pressure applied to Snyder. And so, like, I think that's just like this other influence. It's like there's like this rising tide, like kind of like lapping up, nationally onto our shores here in Washington. And possibly like the culmination of that was Deshaun Watson, being signed again. Like if you're just looking at that from a national perspective, like that conversation is gonna like rage on for like some amount of time, and like anyone associated, it's gonna be bad. And like, yeah, so I just want to put like talk about that, like that national perspective, and I think that could
Well,
be.
to double down on that, I mean, not to go down this wormhole, but Cleveland, I can tell you right now, I will never root for Cleveland again because of the way they handled that. And the reason I'm saying that is that not only did they trade for him, give him the most lucrative deal in NFL history, fully guaranteed, they reworked his contract so that if he's suspended this year, he's only going to lose about $1 million.
It's similar to what they did with Dan Snyder, right? They gave him increased his ownership power at a time when he's accused of horrific things, and
So they increased his profits enough so the fine felt like nothing.
that
Yeah.
is despicable. I
Yeah.
can't see how that can hold up to public scrutiny if they do that. If he gets a year suspension and he basically loses $1 million, I think the NFL is going to get lit up publicly. I think it's going to be bad.
And
So,
they
like,
should.
Horrible look. Apparently, though, they do this regularly whenever a player of significance is facing a suspension. Notably Tom Brady. I think he only paid like $250,000 when he could have faced a lot more. So like teams are always restructuring and helping their players kind of duck under it. What struck out to me, not to go back. I mean, I'm not to like one up you, but like what really struck out to me was the guaranteed contract, $230 million. They basically took an intact 4-year contract and tacked on a 5th year for $94 million and made the whole thing guaranteed. And it was just this level of like commitment and throwing away any semblance of like concern and like hedging for like the they didn't do any investigation. They just empowered this man beyond any other power, but with more power than any that's ever been bestowed upon a player. And so yeah, that really got under my skin.
Well, it's one thing to go after him as a quarterback. It's another thing to completely pay him astronomical money, and then you're talking about a whole new level of deviant to say, all right, and here's the kicker: we're going to change your contract, so if or when you get suspended this year, it doesn't cost you anything. Like, that's going out of your way to circumvent. I mean, hold up. Somebody put this on Twitter. Washington got suspended and fined a $32 million cap hit because we supposedly circumvented the rule of the no cap season. How is that not circumventing the rules when it comes to like, where's the punishment? How is that not something that's going to get scrutinized and penalized, and they're not going to face some sort of repercussions to do that?
It's like just when you think you can't get any more cynical about the NFL,
That
there's always
happens.
another level. And I always come back to the same thing, which is, wasn't there like this whole Me Too movement? It's like, I think the NFL missed it entirely. Like they must have had a lot of meetings going on. They didn't hear about the Me Too movement. And so I think we need to launch another movement, and we're going to call this one No Really Me Too.
I think about that movement. When did that really gain steam? 5-6 years ago. What was going on in Dallas? Rich Dalrymple, the VP of Jerry's right-hand man, effectively, was being investigated internally. So the Cowboys are investigating the Cowboys. Again, I just, it grates on me. But, we paid $2.4 million to the cheerleaders involved, but we found that Rich didn't do anything wrong. The local sports guys are all laughing about this. They're like, this is the most ridiculous thing in the known world. I don't know. The name should be familiar. I assume it's familiar. Dale Hansen. Dale Hansen retired. He was the guy on the local ABC station down here, but he got national coverage for a bunch of his commentaries about things that went on in sports, including, women in sports, gay athletes. And I'll tell you what, the dude pulls absolutely no punches. He lost a lot of friends in the sports community down here, in the professional sports community, because he does not play. When it's wrong, it's wrong, and Dale calls it wrong. And he retired last year, so he hasn't been the face of this thing when it broke with the Cowboys. But he's been interviewed a couple of times, and he's like, if you guys don't think that somebody, within the Cowboys just whitewashed this whole thing, you really don't understand professional sports. That it absolutely happened. It's probably worse than we know about it. It's probably significantly worse than we know. And, and Rich went on with his life for another 5-6 years and then quietly retired just before this thing hit the media. He said, please give me a break. There are no coincidences in professional sports.
Mhm.
So,
Well,
Um,
we hope for better days, because I don't think it can get much worse than it is right now.
So I want to evolve this
I'll say that.
conversation a little further in something that isn't getting talked about as much. I just actually found a report. The first article I found on WTOP where it cites this. Apparently, since the beginning of the year, 20 non-football employees have left the team. 20. Now, the team was approached by, again, JP Finley. It was in his article. So I'm glad he came at them and asked these questions and said, isn't that alarming? And they cited, well, this is about the natural time that the turnover happens. It's usually after the league year starts. This is when your non-football people leave. This is when you kind of cycle. But 20, how many people are working in that building? I know there's a lot, but 20 people have separated themselves from that organization.
I'm not suggesting, I am suggesting it. I'm not saying it's true, but I have heard some people call for the media to look at who those people are, because some of them might be people that testified, when called upon, and in the last investigation. It would be curious to see if any of those people were people that have spoken up or have given, evidence or their experience in Ashburn. If any of those people are the folks that have moved on to better opportunities, but I don't know. It is a little, I didn't really get a feel in that article. I saw that same article today, Derek, didn't sound like they had any idea why that might be. They were just putting
Or at
it
least
out.
they weren't talking about it. But 20 people leaving, that is a lot of turnover.
so
You can't tell me that not one of those people did it because of what's going on right now.
what I'm seeing for numbers are anywhere from 200 to 450 employees, give or take, and that's a total.
So 10%.
Right. And that's well, what I'm saying by that's a total is that includes football personnel too.
Right.
Right. So immediately you've got all the players that are under contract who would count as football personnel.
And coaches.
Right. So
And
that's
trainers.
somewhere between 60 and, I don't know, 85, 100, if you count all the physios. I mean, I assume the physios count as football people, all the trainers, everybody
The
like that.
equipment
So-
managers.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, the field maintenance people.
I don't know if I would count field maintenance people as on the football side.
Yeah,
of things.
true. Yeah, they're
No,
non-football.
but even so, if you take 80 to 100 people out of that equation, you're talking about somewhere between 100 and 300 people, and 20 of those left. That's a significant number to me.
I think that is also a little bit of a reminder of how much damage has previously been already caused within this organization and how much work still needs to be done. I mean, we tend to focus on the football side of it, and we got a true professional in Ron Rivera who seems to have all his stuff together, and small improvements are being made in that regard. We look like we are a professionally run organization from the outside, but years of being tarnished result in a ton of work to do. And when I read that article, that was the first thing that came to mind for me. It was a reminder of just how far we still need to go in order to improve this team's reputation from top to bottom, inside and out.
So
Yeah.
I do want to move on and talk football, but I do have to touch on one other thing. In addition to this, 20 people leaving, Anheuser Busch gone. They're the third sponsorship. Now the flagship station of the team is no longer connected with the team. And again, the team is going to cite, we're looking for bigger and better opportunities. But the local grumblings are that Dan Snyder got tired of people talking bad about him and he severed ties. But you wonder how much of this is on 980, and they didn't want anything to do with him anymore.
So what I heard, and I saw the 980, obviously I saw the 980 announcement first. And the way that read to me was that they said that Washington felt it had more value, which I interpreted that meaning they wanted a lot more money than 980 thought or
Well, they
Bassett
did just
thought.
lose $4 million a year.
That's right. So they may have wanted a lot more. But I was kind of curious about the way that 980 put it, because they also said that they implied, they didn't outright say that they were told how to report or how to put forward the product. They kind of implied that maybe they were being muzzled or told to like be more positive, those kinds of things, which
Because we know that could never happen, right, John?
So they didn't say it outright, but they implied it. And then they also, I thought it was weird because they brought up the Anheuser Busch stuff, which to me doesn't really fit with this at all, unless you're saying it's kind of like a backdoor way of saying, well, we're glad to be done with you because you're despicable. I don't know exactly what they were saying, but I felt like there has to be more to this than just it was too expensive. It even crossed my mind that maybe Washington gave them an offer that they knew they would refuse. You know, in other words, they jacked it up to the point where they knew that 980 probably wasn't going to say yes. And maybe they've got someone in the wings that they're going to do some kind of something special for. I don't know, but that's all conjecture. But it is surprising because that's a whole ton of Washington media personalities that, that are suddenly not as tied in as they were.
Something that sticks out to me in that story, pure conjecture on my part, is the leaked Wilkinson report from the Junkies on 106.7 The Fan. And so, I know for the longest time those two entities were separate, but now I kind of, 980 and 106.7 The Fan, as far as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, I mean, I think of them as the same entity, right?
They're both owned by Odyssey.
Yeah.
They're both owned by the same ownership group. They're in the same building.
So I just think that was potentially the most damning release of information in this entire story, because it really is the closest we'll probably ever get to, well, at least at this point, to a smoking gun. The Wilkinson report, at least initially, was intended to be a written report, and at some point it was changed to be verbal.
No, it's still written. There's a written report somewhere.
Sure. I'm with you. I mean, in terms of what was to be disclosed and what was what was ordered, and at least,
especially since she's come out and confirmed that what the Junkies essentially said before they walked it back was accurate. That her recommendation, if they had asked for it, would have been for Snyder to be removed as an owner.
Snyder, or who confirmed this?
Wilkinson.
Supposedly Beth Wilkinson. That was kind of one of the things the Junkies said.
Oh, right. Yes.
That was the rumors that she was recommending, and then she recently confirmed that had she been asked, she would have recommended that.
So, she confirmed that at a later date.
I saw that somewhere. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see that. That's I did. All right. I need to follow that. That's
it could be kind of a payback thing. It could kind of be like a Bob Irsay move. Like, I don't care what you think, make it happen. I don't want those people involved with our broadcast.
You could imagine. I don't want to go anything beyond that. But the existence of that in their relationship, and I could see that causing a lot of problems, and especially what requests would be done, to kind of change that, I think that would cause a lot of,
I think you might be onto something though, Colin, because it was after the season had already technically started that came out, right? It was after we had already seen that Bram and Julie and D'Angelo Hall were going to be calling the game, so it's not like they could have walked it back last offseason. But I want to say that came out after that agreement, and the new team had been announced and all of that. So it's not like they could have just killed it then. So they kind of had to wait until the season was over to kind of give a shove to Odyssey, right?
Yeah, no, you're right. If they canceled it in week 2, it would have been a little telling.
Right. So I can't dispute what you're saying. Again, the team is going to try to act like it's a part of the new image of the Washington Commanders, but What's the fastest way to alienate yourself from the people you want to keep buying season tickets from you? Is, to go on and piss them off from what they've been listening to for 30 years between 106.7 and 980. When they came out, I saw something where JP Finley said they came out and said, "Oh, we've sold more tickets in the last 6 months than we have in the last 6 years," and blah blah blah. Well, guess what was in there? COVID-19 and a terrible football. So if you don't sell more tickets this season, then you're really talking about a problem. So, anyways, I think maybe we can try to jump into a little bit of football. As fun as it is to take a bar stool to Dan Snyder's head.
Figuratively.
We're a couple weeks post Carson Wentz. I'm interested in how you guys are going to react to this, because it's kind of settled. I think the dust has settled a little bit. We're seeing astronomical trade values. So have we not paid? Is it not as shocking as it was giving up 2 first-round picks and paying a guy, or 2 draft picks and paying a guy $28 million? Does it hurt less? Does it hurt more? I mean, how do you guys feel we're going to go into the season?
Colin, go ahead, man.
Oh man, I'm like going through the stages of grief, like back and forth. So you have to depend. Like right now, where I'm at, what is this, 9 o'clock on Wednesday night? I'm like stage 3. I've gotten to stage 4 and like kind of like really like letting it settle in. But yeah, Matt Ryan, I think would have been a better. You can't know the future, and he probably, I know, like Sam Fortier, I think said today on Kimes Pod that I was listening to. It's unlikely he would have come here, but yeah, it's just kind of like coming to the realization that this is where we're at as a franchise. Like and letting that settle in. Yeah, I don't know if that explains it.
I kind of feel like, without knowing what they were really thinking, like, were they purely looking for a bridge guy? Because if they were, then I'm kind of with you on Matt Ryan. He'd be a great bridge guy, as long as he doesn't shatter his leg in 4 places on the first game he's out there.
Oh, come on, knock on wood, dude. Come on.
But if they were looking for a bridge guy, that's one thing. If they were looking for a bridge / shot in the dark, maybe the guy can, like a Marcus Mariota, maybe he could be a bridge guy, but maybe under the right circumstances, he could really take it up to the next level. I think with Wentz, I kind of feel like they really think like they can make him a Pro Bowl quarterback. I get that sense that they really believe that, like, maybe he was mishandled. He's a good, solid citizen. I know one thing that all we heard initially was like, he's a bad teammate, he's a bad leader, and I think that was probably coming out of, I don't know, maybe Bob Erstey's office. I don't know. But everything we've heard since then is players praising him. He seems, I know, not that you can go by this entirely, but he seems like a solid citizen. When he speaks, he seems sincere and not particularly egocentric.
Yeah.
Of course, you can be fooled, but he seems like a nice guy. And I know the other thing I honed in on is I really wondered how he was going to react once we got through legal tampering and he could actually speak. He seemed to be grateful to be here and making the best of it, and none of this like finger pointing back at the Colts, or I didn't hear a lot of bitterness or kind of, he didn't seem depressed that he was going to be in DC. So that was a big positive for me. That helped me move along that continuum that Colin was talking about, from anger into grudging acceptance, and I might even be able to get excited about him. I don't know. We'll have to see.
So Ron Rivera has talked a lot about the whole idea of Carson Wentz being wanted here, and I've heard that phrase quite often from him. You are wanted here. I think they really, really love this guy. But at the same time, I think by trying to show Carson Wentz that he belongs, that they feel they can get the most out of him in that regard. Let's face it, Ron Rivera is one of those coaches that he will go to bat for you. He's in your corner. He has gotten some lesser known players to basically elevate their level of production in play just through that whole mind game of, you are family, you are wanted here. And I think they're really going to be playing that card with Carson Wentz. to hopefully ensure that he becomes the player that they envision him being. So I think at the end of the day, we have to accept the fact that they love Carson Wentz probably more than we love Carson Wentz.
He's quarterback one, right? I mean, they actually
Yeah.
Rivera used that phrase. So that tells you something.
Mhm.
I'm not I'm not convinced that Wentz was their top choice. I mean, I think, they obviously, I believe the reports that we really went after Russell Wilson. I think Wilson was absolutely the top choice. And I think that they took a very long, hard look at every single option. I totally believe the concept that they even approached Luck's representatives about whether or not he'd be willing to come out of retirement. I think in the end, the team was looking for the most bang for the buck at the position is really what it came down to. Russell Wilson probably would have been more bang for the buck. Let's face it, Russell's one of the elite talents at the quarterback position in the NFL today. He's not Deshaun Watson, thank God, in any way, shape, or form, right? But when it comes down to on the field talent, he's probably not Deshaun Watson at this point in time. He's certainly, he's not Tom Brady with a fistful of rings. But the guy's got a ring. The guy's in the game every single year. And he elevates the play of everybody around him. And so there would have been a lot of bang for the buck, even though we would have had to have given up a lot and we'd be paying a lot more. Colin brought up Matt Ryan. I went and looked real quick just for, chits and grins to see what the contract would have looked like. He would have been cheaper this year on his current contract for Washington than Carson Wentz is. He'd only been $25 million instead of $28 million. But if we cut ties with him after a year, he'd have been $25 million in dead money next year. Wentz doesn't cost us if we get to January 15th next year and we're not happy with him, we can cut the guy and walk away and the balance sheet doesn't look any different. And I think, I honestly think that was an important factor in this as well. The team's showing a tremendous amount of physical responsibility that we didn't show early in the Dan Snyder years with all the crazy free agent signing, right? And I really believe they were looking for bang for the buck. And when you look at Carson Wentz, I see a guy that's a bigger bodied version of Taylor Heineke that can make all the throws that Heineke can't make. He never gives up on a play, good or bad, right? I mean, that's one of the things that we love about Taylor and we don't always love about Taylor, because that works one of two ways, right? It's either brilliant or it's really bad. I mean, there's just not a lot of in between there when you don't give up. Wentz is that same kind of guy. He doesn't give up. He offers us a level of mobility that Matt Ryan was not going to bring to Washington. I don't know. Like I said last time we got together, I was kind of on the Wentz train before we did the quarterback free agent podcast. During that podcast, you guys brought up a lot of things that I wasn't thinking about. And so I wasn't excited about it. And then we traded for him and I had to deal with the fact that I now wasn't excited about a guy that I was excited about. And do I want to backtrack on it? And I'm cautiously optimistic at this point in time. I keep seeing all the great highlight reels, and let's face it, man, the dude's got an arm. And all in my mind, I'm seeing 70-yard touchdowns to Terry McLaurin, at least for a year. Hopefully longer, but at least for this year. And I'm excited. I'm excited about the idea that defenses have to play our offense legit. I'm excited about the idea that they're going to have to gamble to bring an eighth guy into the box to stop Gibson. I'm excited about open underneath routes. I'm excited about De'Ami Brown actually having the potential to go somewhere because quarterback can get him the ball. I'm thinking about all the options that are out there now. And Scott Turner's got to be laying awake at night excited.
I kind of feel like at his worst, he's still the best quarterback we'll have had since Kirk, really. I mean, at least in terms of being able to throw the ball and, get it to receivers. So I'm with you. I know a lot of people were upset that we paid the salary. It does kind of feel like we got jobbed, giving up the picks and picking up all $28 million of this year's salary. But if we keep him for more than 1 year, that argument goes away because he'll be a bargain at that point. And then the other thing would be, I know people have said, well, we won't be able to sign Terry McLaurin. They will find the money to sign Terry McLaurin if he is signable. The Wentz deal is not going to keep them from signing Terry McLaurin. They'll figure that out. It's going to be a matter of whether, he wants to be here and we can pay him what he feels he deserves, which I hope we do. But
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Well, yeah, I just want to say I'm really interested to see if they restructure his contract. This offseason, I've taken a real interest in like just digging into more contract details and like what restructures look like, because it's just like everyone's doing them and void years and stuff. So yeah, they could free up like probably $14 million by lowering his base salary and converting it to a signing bonus and distributing that over 3 years. But there would be like a $14 million dead money hit if we cut him. And so it's to me, that's like the canary in the coal mine to say like, what is their confidence level in this? This is my
love that cat.
little orange cat called Buffers. Can't help it.
He's quieter than Derek's chickens. It's all good, man.
That's true. That's true. My chickens made regular appearances on this.
But yeah, like so, and it all ties into like what's going on now with free agency. I think they were interested in Honey Badger. I mean, I heard that from Keith. It sounds like they had legitimate interest. And so that makes sense with some of the void years and how they're using future cap space to clear cap space now and keep their cap number. Probably right now it's probably like 11.5 or something like that, if you take into account some of these recent like low cost signings. So what are they doing with that space? That's curious to me. Ron Rivera did say though that he was in one way or another maybe like tying the possibility of doing restructures of re-signing Terry and Daron Payne. That could be possible if they did do that restructure for Carson Wentz, freeing up that $14 million. I don't think that's necessarily the case, because you can lower those first year cap hits to for each of those deals probably to like $7 or $8 million, and then you take into account what they're receiving right now. Like I think that could be like an increase of like $5 million. I'm sorry for Terry at least. Daron Payne is actually making $9 million this year. But anyways, yeah, I'm curious to see whether or not they restructure Carson Wentz's contract, because like worst case scenario, you give up a second round pick next year and a third round pick this year. He plays more than 70% of snaps, and then you cut him. That'd be the worst case scenario, right? And then it's like, for what? I don't know if that's a situation where you would look back and say, I wish we did restructure so that we could have like taken a fuller swing of the bat. Maybe the way you look at some of these, how these other teams are pulling cap space from the future into the present, to load up and take a swing now. Or if you're Ron Rivera, you're saying, well, we don't love him. We just kind of want to see what he's like this year. So it's an amazing, I don't know if that's what it is, but it's like, to me, it could be this really good job of threading the needle to like give yourself the best chance this year to make an incremental increase, which I guess is, that's not exactly how I would do it, but I'm not like risking my job, like I as a fan, I'm much more like comfortable with them just like taking huge risks, blowing up the franchise, with the opportunity to actually like become a real contender. For him, he's like, let's take a little more measured approach. And so, yeah, that's interesting. I'll be watching that.
So I want to run down a couple real quick things. You mentioned Matt Ryan. You would have liked Matt Ryan as purely a bridge guy. Do you know what the Falcons' dead cap hit is for Matt Ryan this year?
Gosh, 40.
Anybody want to take a guess?
Oh, it's probably stupid. I don't know. $30 million.
40.5.
Yeah.
Ooh, Colin was almost on the money.
His dead cap number is $40.5 million to play for somebody else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I look at something like that and I'm like, that's a red flag.
And if he only plays 1 year for the Colts, his dead cap money, his dead number next year for them is 25. So in 2 years, he will have cost, he potentially could have cost two franchises in the NFL
$65.5 million in dead
for
money.
nothing. Yeah.
Meanwhile, we gave up one extra pick for a guy like Wentz. And I will toot the Wentz horn a little bit. I've come around on him a lot. I was worried. We did the quarterback breakdown of the free agency, and I could not in the moment get past the Reich letting his guy out the door. But I think that had a lot more with the Irsay. So you'll hear me toot a lot of the Carson Wentz horn, and it's because I start looking. If you really scale back and you look at things, we gave up more to get Alex Smith. We paid him more money. He broke his leg week whatever year. We never really got to see from him, but we paid him for 4 years after that. Knock
So
on wood.
One thing we heard from Rivera, who generally tells you the truth from what I've seen, with maybe a couple of small Dwayne Haskins exceptions, but I think we know why he was hedging on Dwayne Haskins since it was the owner's pick. But one thing he said repeatedly is they were going to be really aggressive at quarterback. They were going to find a quarterback. Whether you hate the Wentz move or you really like it, they were aggressive. Like, we were not one of the teams this in the last 7 days going, who's our quarterback going to be? Oh my God, and all the bowling pins falling left and right, and then scampering to try to figure out, is there anyone that we can get that's left? So we did not end up, at the altar without a bride showing up. We went out and we may have overpaid. That's a reasonable argument, but we went out and got the guy that they could live with and felt decent about. And so I'm glad about that. I don't think anyone can say like we took the only guy that was available.
Well, the other thing is, of the guys that were on the market who would come here, because you have to take Aaron Rodgers, cross him off the list. Deshaun Watson, we weren't even a player in that. And thank God. Let me say that if the team did one thing right, it was that we didn't make a play for Deshaun Watson. So, kudos to the front office there. And the other guy, Russell Wilson, didn't want to come here. But of the rest of them, and I'm just playing, the advocate here.
Guys? Think about who, other than Wentz was in the top 3 or 4, but who was the guy that we really, most of us wanted as far as
Trubisky.
Huh?
Trubisky.
Okay, so he was immediately gone. And who was the other guy?
Winston.
He played. Right. So I imagine what might have panned out is we'd have hung our hat on Winston, only to have this all go down where the Saints don't get Watson, and then they immediately snatch him up and sign him to an extension. So we could have been right there thinking we had him and have him snatched away by
and to take it to another level, if you look at the guys that got picked up, one of the things that we talked about in that podcast was who are the guys that could do enough, that could win. Like Mariota, I'm pretty comfortable saying Mariota's not going to win. You know what I mean? I'm pretty comfortable saying a lot of the guys that were signed are not going to win. We liked Trubisky because there was enough of a chance that he could show up and something could surprise somebody. I don't want to live on 5 years ago, but Wentz was in the MVP conversation the year they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think Trubisky and Wentz both had that kind of factor of we could strike gold. Like,
but Wentz has done it. Trubisky hasn't.
But Wentz ceiling on Wentz, we know is higher. We don't know on Trubisky. I mean,
that's the point. Wentz has been there and done that. He's been part of those conversations. Nobody else on the market this spring except Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, neither of whom, Aaron Rodgers was never really on the market. But Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson are the only other two guys that have been there, done that, got the t-shirt as far as being in that MVP conversation, as far as taking a team to the playoffs and making some noise. Although Wentz really wasn't the guy then. He laid down an 11-2 record that somebody else benefited from. But the point is, he went 11-2.
Yeah. He had a great EPA I'm an advanced stat guy. I really like expected points added.
Mhm.
Like if you look at like the arguments against Kirk Cousins in terms of like the garbage stats, like that kind of stuff really goes out the window. But so like EPA is a really good measure. I think it's not there's no one great measure all by itself, but yeah, like Carson Wentz in his first year was like ranked number 2 in the league, and then second year was like 12, then it went down to 16, then it went down to 32, and then back up to 20. And if I recall, I think that's about right. So like you average all that out, and it's like 16.6 or something. So yeah, you're gonna get like a guy. You're gonna get something of like a little bit of all of that, And it's one thing to get it in 1 year, but like that like amount of variance, like over like the course of 16, 17 games. But like if you start piling together really bad games in a row, like that's the type of risk like compiling that I don't think many coaches and organizations can stick with. So it's like, and that's why we're at where we're at, with Wentz now on his third team, because yeah, 20 or 30. If he finishes 20 or 30, below like that, like 32 the way he was 2 years ago, like that's just not going to happen in this league. So I was kind of like, I like Trubisky just because he kept like our expenditure down and gave us more of an opportunity to improve the rest of our roster.
That
Because
was our selling point in the podcast, was who he's going to be economical. He's not going to break the bank to try to go get him.
But yeah, this I mean, to your point, Paul, I agree. I mean, the way that they're talking about Wentz makes you think they really do believe in him, which could be the case, or it could be that they're just great teachers, like and really addressing Wentz like as an individual student, like what do we need to do for this guy? We got to talk about his confidence, build him up.
Well, and
things like that.
To blend it all together, they have their QB1 this year. They can support their QB1 this year. If Wentz goes out, balls out, we win 11 games, because I think that's perfectly plausible. And I know that might seem like a huge jump, but 4 games over last year when we went from the hardest schedule to arguably the weakest schedule is a big jump. And you're talking about a team and a quarterback that can do dynamically different things with the weapons he has. So if we were to make the jump to 11-6, I think we would all give up for that right now. If I could tell you that you could go to 11-6 next year, you probably hold on to Wentz, and you can do that, and you're out of pocket less money next year than you were this year.
I think the secondary benefit is we might find out what our receiving core can do. We might find out what is Diami Brown really the guy that they think he can be? Is Cam Sims, can he go from like, we'll sign you for 1 more year, because we think there's this Cam Sims that we envision you could be, but you're just never quite seem to get there. And we don't even put you on the field enough to see if you can get there. We might be able to see if he can play. Even guys like John Bates, we might find out that John Bates is a hell of a tight end. I mean, we know he can block and he can catch the ball, but we might see him turn into something special. And Logan Thomas, who knows? But I just think we have I wonder how active we're going to be getting wide receivers, because I think they like our wide receiver core. And now that we have Wentz who can get the ball there on time, maybe they're right. Maybe there's a lot to like there that we underappreciate.
So 2 questions in that vein then. Well, I say 2 questions in that vein. The first question goes back to Derek's point, can we, thinks we can win 11 games this year against a lousy schedule. We won 7 last year against a really hard schedule without great quarterback play. How many games do you think we win last year if Wentz is the quarterback? That's the first question, because I'm curious about that question. And the second question is, we've said over and over, we've heard over and over from Washington, we want you here. You're our guy. This is a place you Carson Wentz are wanted. Do we draft a quarterback? What message does that send then if we draft a quarterback? Is that undermining the message? What do we do for the next 4 months that reinforces you're our guy while still taking care of the team.
Well,
I
here's
think
I'm sorry, go ahead, Paul.
I think you're throwing the message of we want you here out the window, Bob, if you pick a quarterback early. If you're picking someone to develop for your future and to help establish a foundation and just to have other bodies in the quarterback room, that's completely acceptable. I don't think a guy like Carson Wentz should have his feelings hurt as a result of that. But if you go first or second round and you bring somebody in there, I agree with you. I don't think that message jives.
So what
at that
round's
point.
okay, Paul?
Definitely not the first round.
You can't
No,
approach
definitely.
it that way. You cannot go into the draft and say, we're going to draft a quarterback, but we're going to pick one that has a low probability of being a good quarterback because we don't want to hurt our quarterback's confidence. You can't do that. I think we're going to find, I look at it from the opposite direction, Paul, because I hear what you're saying. I think we'll know whether the "we believe in you" stuff is true if we don't pick a quarterback in the first 2 rounds. If we do pick a quarterback, then it's exactly what it looks like. They aren't sure. And that is the right thing to do if you're not sure. So that's the way I'm looking at it. I don't know. What do you think, Colin?
I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think Carson Wentz would know as well. And that could prove to be a misstep. Which is to say, if you were one of these organizations like Green Bay that would not blink at taking a quarterback in the first round, maybe they trade back or maybe some situation arises. In that situation, I think your messaging needs to match that reality, which would be like a little more measured than what we've seen so far. Like you say, Paul, like this really looks like, we love you. We want you to feel good about yourself and all this stuff. And if you in the back of your mind know that you could be taking a first round quarterback or even second, then that would be unfortunate messaging to use.
Well, beyond the messaging, if you believe in I'm playing the card here. If you believe in Carson Wentz, you need to give him the weapons to succeed. And using a first or second round pick on a quarterback is not giving him the weapons to succeed.
Okay. All right. Now, but think about this for a second.
But
Derek. Let's look at this from the coach's perspective for a second.
Hold on.
Okay.
Let me finish my point.
Told you we interrupt each other, Colin.
But if you're looking at Carson Wentz and you're looking at this team and you're looking at Wentz's contract and you're looking at making the team the best it can possibly be, the best player available doesn't matter when it comes to position. Okay? Let's say Malik Willis is there at 11. I think you can take Malik Willis at 11 and you can pull Wentz aside and say, Carson.
I'm not buying it already, man. I'm like, you're full of shit. You drafted Malik Willis.
No, but
I don't believe a word coming out of your mouth.
Well, but
you can.
Go ahead.
But then this is part of what I've been thinking, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this for the last 2 weeks now, man, and going out and checking out all the mock drafts. What's everybody saying now, right? 3 weeks ago, every mock in the world,
Kenny Pickett was everywhere.
Had us picking a quarterback at 11, even potentially trading up to 8 or 9, or, to pick our guy. Now every mock out there has got us picking a wide receiver at 11 or trading the pick to Pittsburgh and dropping back to 20 and taking a wide receiver. But stop and think about this. We know Curtis Samuel is trusted. I assume Curtis Samuel is getting healthy. The team, the coaches look at this like the way I'm looking at this, and granted, I'm a total amateur, which is why I'm here and they're making millions to coach a professional football team, right? But we've got one major hole in this team at this point in time. Middle linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
There is no first-round talent in this draft at the middle linebacker position. You go look at every mock out there, and nobody is projecting a middle linebacker in the first round. If they aren't projecting it above 28, right? There is no center of the defense talent out there. So if you're best player available and you're looking at the team and you think, all right, where's my biggest problem? My biggest problem is middle linebacker. My second biggest problem is the fact that I already know what the guy behind my starting quarterback can do, and he doesn't have an NFL arm? What if my starting quarterback goes down with another ACL injury in week 10 and I'm in contention? And Malik Willis is there at 11. Kenny Pickett is there at 11, and they both have NFL arms. You're making your team better.
Yeah, it's tough though. I think Bob and Colin both kind of alluded to the same thing, which is the cold calculating front office decision is easy to make, right? Because we know the impact of quarterback, and we know how, really, even no matter what we say about Wentz, it's a gamble. It's a high risk proposition whether he's just going to be okay or whether he's a franchise quarterback. We don't know. Nobody knows that right now. So the cold calculating front office move is grab a quarterback. If there's somebody you love and they're there in the first round, absolutely you have to take them. But to Paul's point, and to kind of Colin alluded to it, which is that could blow up in your face, because we saw how Aaron Rodgers reacted with Jordan Love. Now, Rodgers is a diva, but every starting quarterback, especially one that just got booted out of his job after 1 year, undeservedly, I think, probably. And then you're going to bring in his successor.
Hold on. How did Aaron Rodgers react to Jordan Love?
So it might be one of those things where you
hold on, but John, how did Aaron Rodgers react to Jordan Love? I think he won the last 2 MVPs.
Well, that's a fair point, but Aaron Rodgers probably do that if you hack
And
off
he
one of
just
those.
re-signed with the team for 4 more years. He's not that upset.
Well, they had to pay him $50 million a season to make him
Anybody
happy,
would have
but
paid him $50 million a season.
I hear you. It's a good point. And they are
And
grown ups. They're grown
I
men.
started my point saying, if you believe in Wentz, you got to surround him. I think the team is in as good of a scenario as they can possibly be in. One, he upgraded the team. The quarterback position is better now than it has been arguably since before Cousins. Cousins didn't have the arm Wentz has. Cousins has been a stat patter his entire career. Cousins has played the game like he wanted guaranteed contracts, never to win football games. Okay. He won some games. I'll give him that. He's won enough games, but he's the first quarter. He has had a guaranteed salary for 7 or 8 seasons. It's an asinine. You start to look back and say, okay, well, this was calculated. He is better than Taylor Heineke. He's better than all of those guys that we're talking about. And you can immediately plug him into this offense and he changes it, which is what you want from your quarterback. At that point, what you gave up doesn't matter. Okay. It got better. And when you can do that with no commitment beyond this season, unless you want it, we have 3 years of control if he's good enough. If he's not good enough, we can get out of it.
You just brought up my next point. If you believe in him enough not to draft a quarterback at number 11 in April, why haven't you already extended him and dropped that cap number?
Because there's no guarantee. Colin was talking about restructuring earlier. Why would you? Why would you do that? You can afford him. You're not over the cap. You don't need the money right now. Why don't you keep it the way it is? Because if he does bomb, you can believe him in all you want. Guess what? We believed in Alex Smith and his leg exploded on our field. And it would have felt a lot better, not to sound terrible. It would have felt a lot better to know we could have gotten out of that contract the next season with no money instead of paying him $25 million to turn his leg brace into a Lombardi. Okay. I love the guy. The story was fantastic, but it killed the team. I'm looking at something right now. It came out on Twitter the 22nd, literally yesterday. Here's your stat of the day. The highest average depth in yardage 3 seconds after the snap was when running around. Jesus, if you want to get geeky in 2021, you want to take a guess who leads the league in that stat?
One more time.
The highest average depth in yards 3 seconds after the snap when they were actually running a route, not run blocking.
Yeah,
so who in the
downfield?
NFL was the furthest downfield after 3 seconds when they're actually running a pass play? Take a wild freaking guess.
Let's go with Terry McLaurin.
That's my
Anybody else?
It was
Who
De'Ami
hasn't
Brown.
seen it? De'Ami freaking
Who
Brown.
was
12 yards. He was further than Deshaun Jackson, further than Nico Collins, who I loved, further than all of those guys. I went on, like, we've talked about my thread on BGO a couple times. The guy was beating defensive backs. I hold the caveat.
There's
They
another
knew
whole
they
part
didn't have
to
to.
it. You-
What?
There's another whole part to playing the position.
Hey,
Not
yeah, but
just-
we never put it on his freaking hands. It never happened last year.
Well, we'll see. I agree with you.
So-
He's a go route guy, John, not a stop and catch guy.
Still
So
gotta
if you put it
catch
out
it.
here,
Even when you go, you still got to catch it. So we'll see.
So, but I look at things like that and you start to wonder, when you have a guy that labors to throw the ball 45 and you have a guy that can drop it 65 in a bucket anytime he wants to, what's going to change? If Wentz blows up in our face, then you can walk away into a better draft class with no commitment beyond him. Literally, there's no more money allocated to that.
I know.
I don't want to pay him $15 million next year to not be here. I don't want to pay him $40 million to not be here, like Atlanta's paying Matt Ryan.
Good points. Yes. Yeah.
So I would keep it the way it is. Wait till June 2nd. You get that extra money from Landon. You extend Terry. You have conversations with Payne, and you rock and roll. And if it bombs out, guess what? If he sucks, you're picking high enough to pick a better quarterback in a better quarterback draft class, or you have to move less up to get him.
And by the way, they were out looking at 2023 quarterbacks today. They were at, I don't know where they were, but Rivera and one of the Martys was out looking at one of the quarterbacks, not in this draft class, but in the 2023 draft class. I wish I could tell you who that
really?
was.
That's interesting. Yeah. No. Yeah.
So I think what I heard is if they pick a quarterback high, that's a clear indicator that they're not real confident that Wentz is going to be an MVP candidate in the next 3 years. And in that case, it's the right decision, right? If you don't believe, if we just brought him in because we needed somebody, then we should be drafting a quarterback if we love one. If they don't,
if we draft a quarterback at 11, I'm going to be pissed off. And I'm only playing like I said, I was only playing the other side of the card there.
Does anyone think
frustrated?
Does anyone think we're going to pick a quarterback in the first 2 rounds? I do not.
I could see us taking a playmaker at 11 and then trying to move back into the first round and picking up developmental. If Malik Willis or somebody falls, you can move back up into the last couple picks so that you can preserve that 5th-year option. And I think you can save face a little bit because you're still giving them a weapon. And you can have that conversation with Carson and say, dude, you know how this game works. 5 years from now, you're not even under contract anymore. So don't worry about that. We've got you. But if you take a guy straight up at 11, Kenny Pickett is our pick at 11, I'm going to throw everything off my desk because then at that point, why would you even trade for Wentz? I'm just arguing both sides of the coin.
If it's up to you, Derek, what do we do at 11?
I trade it back. I trade back to 20 with Pittsburgh. I'm on the phone with them now saying if Malik Willis is there at 11, you tell me what you're going to give me. And then I take the best receiver available at 20, and I'm probably holding a first-round pick in my hand for 2023. So then we go into 23 with 2 first-round draft picks. Tell Pittsburgh, if Malik Willis is there, I want this year's first, next year's first, and at least a third this year. And I get everything I gave back for Wentz, because if you can get a first and a third in addition to swapping firsts, you're going to get a third-round compensatory for Sheriff. So now you've basically given up. You get back everything you gave up for Wentz. And all you're out of it is salary.
All right. Well, we're not going to allow anyone to talk draft tonight.
Well, that's why I didn't get into the quarterbacks. But anyways,
I will say, I think there's when you look at the draft picks that we gave up, that third this year, and even if you assume that the next year is a second, and then we swap the seconds. If you look at the this draft value chart by over the cap, Jason Fitzgerald did it. They look at the value of the draft picks based off of the contracts that those players selected at those slots go on to make, and then they average that out and adjust for inflation and rising costs and stuff like that. Anyways, you can get to the idea where the first pick in the draft should make you should be worth about $20 million in what they're able to provide you. That's kind of independent of position value. So if it's a quarterback, it could potentially be higher. Like you think of Joe Burrow, right now he's raised to the value of that first round pick, because that first overall pick, because he's producing at a level of probably $35-40 million.
Right.
And so anyways, all right. So you do that for our trade for Wentz, and it comes up to be the 28th pick. So a low first round draft pick. And if it's not a second round pick that's traded, it's a high second. Value wise though, if you look at again, what type of contract can you expect to receive if you spend that pick on someone? It's probably $8 million. That's not to say it's a quarterback. If it was a quarterback, you could probably still say okay, maybe $15-20 million. You're then saying, okay, if you spend this draft capital on a quarterback, are you getting $20 million? And I think we are. Whether or not we're getting 28, I think might be a different story. You know what I mean? But that's the question again. It's how do you value this player? Is it Trubisky, or is it Mariota? I'm sorry, Winston, who's at 15 a year, I think, and then or
Well, Winston was clearly brought in to compete for a starting job. Trubisky wasn't. 2 years at 28
Right.
million, or 2 years at 14 million or 12 million total. He's not brought in to start. He's brought in to compete.
100.
There are teams in the league paying more than that for backups.
100%. But yeah, so 15, I think will be if you look at Winston as this year's best bridge, you could say the bridge now value is between $7 and $15 million. And so here we are paying $28 million, and in terms of draft pick value that we've given up, you could say maybe it was $8 million in draft value. If we're getting and not position value raised. If you raise that $8 million draft value that we give up, I'd say that maybe that's $15 million. But so then I don't know. This is all kind of roughly to say, if he provides good average, just average starting value quarterback play, it's worth it on a dollars and cents kind of situation.
Then the compensation wasn't too much. You haven't given up you might be paying him top 15 money, but you haven't given up top 15 assets to get him.
It's a great way of putting it.
You're continuing on. We have him inked for 3 years. So then
the value in his cost goes down.
Right. We're all focused on the first season, which rightfully we should be, right? Because we don't know what we have. But if it turns out he's average to above average and we've got him inked for 3 years, now we're really in good shape. Yeah,
he's making you $10 million in value, and all those little edges add up. Especially if you have really high value players on your roster. Let's say we end up re-signing, Chase Young and Montez Sweat to super duper big deals. That takes up a lot of your edge. Now you're looking at those guys that you're hoping that they provide market value. You know what I mean? So, and you're playing top of the market, so all that expenditure there is then saying, okay, where's the rest of our edge? It has to be in these little things of saying, okay, we're collecting $5 million in value here, 10 million here, or one, whatever, et cetera.
And
so, go ahead, Paul.
Now, just the other thing that I just wanted to tack on to what Colin was mentioning in regards to Carson Wentz, just came to mind. A Carson Wentz or an effective Carson Wentz in the NFC has a lot more value than an effective Carson Wentz in the AFC. Honestly, I don't think Carson Wentz for this coming season is a playoff quarterback if he's in the other conference. In the NFC, I 100% believe that he's very capable of taking our team to the playoffs. So I think that in and of itself adds a bit of value to him as our starting quarterback as well.
He could be in the top 4, top 5 quarterbacks of the NFC this next year.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already looking at him as the second best quarterback, right? Just based on
in our
history.
division.
Yes. So just at that point, that's like, hey, we might be able to do something with that. So that's a really good point.
Yeah,
So-
well, the level of competition has dropped immensely. And we've already been at this thing for a while, so I'm not going to dig too much, but the balance of power has shifted to the AFC very fast, and it's very strong. It seems like everybody went to the AFC. So if Wentz, I mean, it's ifs and buts, the old saying, but if Wentz can put things together with this team, there's not a very strong and hard path to playoff success. And I'm not going to put a cap on that or some expectation, but to just be success, I think we would all just be elated to win a playoff game. You know what I mean? And if looking at our conference, you got Brady, Rodgers, and then it's just, I mean,
Stafford.
where is it?
Stafford's got to be in that conversation.
Prescott.
Brady, Rodgers, Stafford. I mean, I'm going to throw Dak in there just because of the tiers of it. But beyond that, who really scares you in the NFC between those four? Beyond those three, because I'll leave Dallas out of it because fuck Dallas, and this is a Redskins podcast.
Well, one thing that pops in my mind is like, whoever advances to the Super Bowl from the NFC, for the next 10 years is probably like guaranteed runner-up. But that aside, that's like my nihilistic, pessimistic fandom, showing. But like, something that's helping me, or like, kind of get behind this maybe idea of like what Ron is trying to do and like this incremental year 3 change. An analogy that popped in my head is like a balloon. And so like, imagine like you're blowing up a balloon and like the first couple blows are like really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like once you get it going, like let's say on your third try, you're really getting some expansion. And that resistance goes down. And I think that can be really, really important to, going on to further stages, perhaps, if we're like trying to stretch this metaphor. But like, what happens if like air goes out of the balloon? Like that can be really debilitating to where you want to go, to be able to like maintain morale, keep momentum, keep the franchise, going in the right direction. So I'm just trying to keep an open mind about like what they're trying to accomplish here. And I think that analogy kind of might work.
Look at it this way, though, and I know you know this because you're right there with us watching constantly. But look what we've done the last 2 seasons, and I'm not going to go through the laundry list of ridiculous barriers and obstacles and horrible bad luck that we've had. And we had it Ron's first year, and then we had it Ron's second year. We had the COVID. We had a couple of weeks where we couldn't really even field a legitimate team. We had a quarterback under center whose name eludes me right now because he was irrelevant.
Which one, Ishmael or Larson or
one of those guys,
Rouillet or
and I think
who's number 4?
And one of the toughest schedules we've had in a decade. So I mean, and yet we made the playoffs one of those seasons inexplicably. And I know the division was bad. I get that, but it's the division you play in. So that's not like an irrelevant factor. That's a very relevant factor. And then last season, it was not, I mean, we made some noise. I think if our defense had not started out so slow, we gave some games away that we shouldn't have. We could have been a playoff team last year. And that's with all the things that we already know about it as far as barriers and not having every position where we needed it to be. So, and I think part of that is just, I'm making a point here is Rivera, the mentality of Rivera and Jack Del Rio, whether you like his MAGA loving self or not, and Scott Turner and the guys that they bring in, the mentality, they're bringing in guys who do not give up, that play till the last whistle is blown. And I mean, we haven't had that in a long time where the team just, I mean, Taylor Heineke is the poster child. That kid, I was a high school cross country runner, not to get into a long-winded story, but I was following my coach down the hallway one day, and he was talking to a football coach, and he said, I saw Jeffries is out there with you. And he goes, how's he doing? He said, that kid, he didn't have a lick of talent, but I wish I had 20 of them. And the thing is, that's it. I didn't have as much talent as the other guys on my team, but you know what? I beat most of them, and I beat them a lot because I worked harder. I tried harder. I listened to the coaches, and I feel like we've got those kind of players. And so I give us a fighting chance this season. I really do.
You mean like a running back that is so happy to be here, he might actually disagree or agree to terms and then decide that he's not going to play for a team in the offseason? Before we sign off, maybe take a couple minutes here. I do want to touch base on this a little bit, McKissick and some others, but
are we done? That's what I want to know.
No, we can't be done. Free agency has kind of been a little anticlimactic. We saw some guys get jettisoned, but we literally trimmed our payroll for our guards from about $30 million down to, I don't know, about 8.5. So, and that's where a lot of the savings were. We saw McKissick agree to terms with Buffalo and decide he wasn't going to go to Buffalo. He was going to come back. Read into that what you are. I think that was a major miscommunication between the team and the agent. You can fault who you want. But other than that, it's been a kind of a slow free agency. We brought back Danny Johnson. I saw that. That went down like a couple hours ago, actually.
Supposedly they're on the cusp of re-signing Cornelius Lucas.
Lucas is in the works. Cam Sims is back on a 1-year deal. So we
got 2 kickers.
Yeah, we did. We tendered Sly. We tendered Johnson. So that, those are a couple more guys, but it's been kind of a soft free agency. But I think we're back. I think we went back to what we did in year 1 of Rivera, where we found McKissick, we found Logan Thomas, we found a lot of these guys that they were hit the second tier of free agency and nobody was really giving them much of a shot, but they fit what we were looking to do. And I mean, that speaks volumes. Hopefully we can kind of continue that. I know it's not fun to sit here and scroll on Twitter and not see any news and everybody else is like doing things and you kind of want to see that meme where the guy's poking the dead horse and he's like, do something. But
I don't think it's a stretch to say that through 2 weeks of free agency now, we're an improved football team. Certainly as far as the starting 22 are concerned.
Starting 22, yes. I don't know about him. I worry about defensive tackle. I do worry about.
Wise did all right in 2 appearances last year.
I know, and so did Smith Williams, and so did Tony, and so did Brantley King.
You can make the argument that Ioannidis hasn't exactly been all that in a bag of chips since Ron got to town.
My problem wasn't Ioannidis, it was settled.
I'm actually more worried about the O-line. I'm not worried about them because I know we talked last week about that we have a really great backup to Scherf that'll move right into the starting role, and Eric Flowers. I mean, Eric Flowers played great for us, but I think the guy we brought in, Norwell, is probably a wash there for the most part.
Paul wants to talk about the coach with you.
I know, yeah. So he's gonna be.
Hold on, John. Flowers hasn't been to 5 Pro Bowls and he hasn't been into a single All-Pro team. Norwell has done all of that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, that's fair. I'm just saying, I think Eric Flowers, he overplayed expectations. That's always been, he's terrible as a tackle or couldn't get it done as a starting tackle. And then, he benefited from a lower bar, a lower set of expectations, I think, but he played really well for us.
Yeah. But Norwell came in, he's making a third of it.
Yeah.
So in addition to all those savings in terms of the financials that we have along the offensive line, I think we're also setting ourselves up with that group to have some sustained success for the next couple years. And when you think about it, when you go into year 4 and 5 with Ron Rivera, that's when you really want to start making some hay and making a move in the conference. And I think it's really important as we go into year 4 and 5 to have continuity and have stability along that offensive line. Coming into this coming year, 2022, we're going to have 4 of our 5 projected starters to be guys who are returning back from last year. And going into 23, the following year, which would be Rivera's 4th year with our team, we are projected at this point to have 4 of our 5 current offensive linemen to still be on payroll and to still hopefully be projected to be back as starters. The only guy who would be on an expiring contract going into 23 would be Wes Schweitzer. And assuming they were to bring him back and are happy with him, you could potentially be going into year 4 of Ron Rivera with 5 guys coming back from this past year along their whole line. Pardon me?
When's the last time we did that?
Yeah, we haven't done that in a while.
Yeah,
and then
5 capable guys. You're not looking at that line with a glaring hole saying, yeah, we're gonna bring him back and he's serviceable. You know, I mean, they're capable starting offensive linemen.
Just keep in mind what's happened to us, though, guys. The last 3 seasons, at times we've had the most number of rotations of offensive linemen of any team in the league because we had so many injuries. So I just keep that in mind. And when I was mentioning the O-line, I'm talking about depth primarily. I think we're fine with the guys that we have right now, but we need to have the Schweitzers in ready to go behind them. And I'm not sure we have that right now.
Well, that's why they brought Larson back, who filled in at center and guard. And they brought back, now you said Lucas, who's a swing guy.
The other encouraging part about that, John, I know there might be some concerns about interior depth and whatnot, but you got guys like Keith Ismail and you got guys like Sadiq Charles, who both had some fairly valuable experience. I know they were thrown into the fire this year, but I believe they each had 4 or 5 starts each on a year. So, I mean, that can be a big building block for them moving forward, especially as younger players.
I mean, we went 4 deep at the center position, and you can argue that offensive line was still a strength of this football team.
Yeah, and I think you can say those kinds of things, Bob, because of the fact that I think since Rivera's come in here, he's put as much emphasis on building the roster with the lower tier guys. So let's say, guy number 35 on the roster to guy number 53 on the roster, as he has to the upper echelon players. And when you focus on the whole, you're able to have sustained success. So I firmly believe that you build really, really good rosters in the NFL by focusing just as much on those lower tier players as you do on those upper tier players. And I think it's a little refreshing in that regard that we're actually seeing that happen. And when we have a rash of injuries being thrown upon us, we're not necessarily a dumpster fire at that point. We're still able to survive.
Yeah.
So, Paul, I feel like you might not get this reference. It's an American TV 1970s reference, but I feel like I'm Grasshopper and I'm getting ready to snatch the rock out of your hand because your wisdom.
I'm sorry. I don't get the reference.
Go ahead, Colin.
Thank you for the kind words. I like to talk about position value this time of year. And when you look at the top 10 contracts value-wise for each position, you get a pretty good idea of how teams are valuing each position. And guard and guard's really low on that list. I think it's 13 million. That's probably the 4th lowest or something like that. I think that's a great position to balance away from. And to be last year, I'm pretty sure we were 1 or 2 in expenditure at that position with Brandon Sheriff,
and Eric Flowers.
Flowers was, I think,
10 million.
Yeah, he was only making $3 million for us last year. I mean, we were paying $3 million, but I guess you could say he was making more than that. I think because
yeah, but this year that number almost quadrupled. It was up over 9.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I mean, I wouldn't say like I like our roster like at this very moment, in comparison to how it was, at the end of the season. But I like the direction that they've taken in terms of like balancing away from the offensive guard and the defensive interior position. That's $18 million. That's a little bit more valuable position, but I think you're taking into account contracts of like 3, 4 nose tackles, which are highly specified and can really like, get contracts well north of $20 million. Like you're like your typical three defensive technique, D tackle. Um, $18 million, $17 million. I think we're right on market with what we're paying Jonathan Allen. And so, yeah, like we don't need to be spending a whole lot of value at that position, anyways, especially on our third and fourth defensive tackles. I mean, Ioannidis was going to be making $9 million on the bench, So, yeah, position value I think is kind of like what kind of makes that clear, and I do like those changes.
And we've been playing with discount quarterbacks since Alex Smith. So, I mean, not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but at some point you're not going to be paying discount quarterbacks. So you have to have balance in other roster spots, or you just can't sustain it. And that's why you were talking about the AFC. I think the Rooster's going to come home to nest at some point with all these AFC teams that are spending insanely. And I know the Rams keep disproving that theory, but at some point you're not going to be able to sustain it when you're paying these outrageous contracts to one or two players. It's going to fall apart. So I think we're ahead of the game on that front, even though I'll confess, it's dissatisfying when you're watching free agency. We all enjoy, the exciting big signings or whatever, but it's just not who we are right now.
And we know from experience that there's going to be egg on one of the faces of those teams who are spending big. And I guarantee you one of them will flop this year and not make the playoffs.
100%. Yeah, there's always value in doing the opposite, So if that means not spending a lot in dead cap, and making a lot of good moves otherwise, yeah, that would be really cool. Hopefully that's a trend.
Well, my name is George Costanza. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents. So yeah, that's it.
Nice.
All right. Well, we have been at this thing for 97 minutes, literally. So I think it's a good time to sign it off. Colin, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. It was a good conversation.
We would love to have you back as we get closer to the draft if we haven't killed any enthusiasm that you have, Colin.
No, I'd love to. I really enjoy all your takes and vibe and your show. So yeah, thanks, appreciate it. And all the conversation. I think you guys are putting a really important focus on some lesser discussed topics. So especially the release of report and the boycott Dan stuff. So yeah, thanks a lot for everything you guys are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Y'all fellas have a good night. We'll get together soon.
Cheers. Bye.